Okay, this is an amazing story, really. Irish people would have been following this, I'm sure. No doubt they would have been following this over the last few days over the weekend. I'll read you just a little bit of the email that Cindy sent to me before saying hello to her. I think she's standing by. But just before we say hello to Cindy, she sent me an email this afternoon. Lovely email, and I'm glad she did. She said, Richie, I'm an Irish lady who flew from London to Dublin on Friday last and was put into quarantine because I had the incorrect COVID test. I was lied to by the police in Ireland and was held against my will at a hotel in Dublin. I asked an Irish Army officer if I could have legal advice and he refused me. I want to highlight this story because I feel it went against my human rights. I was threatened with arrest so many times. And I know many of you are following this. Cindy did post a very emotional video on Twitter a couple of days back where she was obviously, understandably upset as she was in quarantine. Let's welcome to the programme Cindy Connolly. Cindy, it's lovely to meet you despite the circumstances. How are you?
Hi, Richie. I'm all right, I guess.
You're hanging in there. And I understand at the moment you were released from quarantine eventually, were you, Cindy?
I was, yeah.
Thank God for that. Do you want to take us back to last Friday and tell the story in your own words? And I won't be interrupting you, so take all the time you want.
Sure. It's basically, I'll take you back further than last Friday because we had a problem with my dad's carer, and I phoned up at the woman who organises the carers. My dad's 79, and he'd just come out of hospital, and there were some issues with the carer. So she decided that she would get a new carer, but she wasn't sure when she could get one. And I said, listen, not to worry, I'm going to fly home because my car packed up. I'm a driving instructor. It's in the Ford garage at the moment, and that's another issue. But anyway, so I decided, right, I'm going to fly home, and it was kind of a bit all last minute. So I thought I'll pop down to the testing centre and get myself a test, exactly like I did when I flew over in March of this year. I spent a month with my dad. He really needed quite a lot of support, and I wasn't working because I wasn't allowed to work in the UK because of the pandemic. I'm self-employed. So exact same test. I thought that's fine because they let me in the last time, and it was March, and it was like the height of the pandemic. So I thought, right, I'll fly over with that test. So I got to the airport, queuing up. Ryanair's checking everything. Looked at my text saying it's negative. That's fine. Jump on the plane. Text my dad. Told him that I'd text him when I landed. So airplane landed at Dublin Airport probably about 9:30, I think it was. Texted my dad. Just landed, Dad. I'll see you soon. So that's fine. Then I went into the hall where the immigration is. So I'm queuing up, and there's quite a lot of people in the queue. So I'm queuing up. I go to the immigration, and he asks for my passenger locator form. I showed it to him. That's grand. He looked at the text, proof of a negative COVID test, and he looked and he said, "Oh, that's not a PCR test." And I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" He said, "Oh, you're supposed to have a PCR test." So I said, "Okay, well, I flew in." I scrolled down and I showed him the test that I had previous to that in March. And I said, "Look, I flew in on this test. What's the situation? Because if I got through in March, what's the story?" So he said that I wasn't allowed entry at the moment, and that he would be. He asked me to join another queue where I could speak to the police. So at that point, I started to get a bit panicky because I thought, "Oh my God, the police! I mean, what's going on?"
Yeah.
So I didn't want to phone anybody just yet. I thought, let me see what's going on. So when I got to speak to a police lady, she cautioned me, and she said that I was breaking some kind of law. And I said, "Look, I need to get home to my dad because he's got no carer this weekend, and I really need to be there because there's no one with him. I just want to go home just, what's going to happen? Where am I going to go? So she said, someone's going to take you to a centre where you explain your circumstances. And she said, you'll be home this evening. Don't worry about it. And I said, but what's actually going on? Will I get any kind of legal advice when I go there? Am I going to get any kind of advice? And she goes, don't worry, there'll be someone there to advise you when you get there. So then I'm put over into a corner with another 15 people who are in the same circumstance as me. There was one lad who actually got scammed in London. He went to a clinic, it was totally fake. I think he paid about 80 quid for the privilege of getting a fake COVID test, PCR test, and he was sitting there as well. And there was a lot of other people there who had lateral flow test and didn't understand why they had been, detained. So we're all sitting there, and we sat there for about maybe 2 hours, I think. And then someone came over. Now, in the meantime, people needed to go to the toilet, and we were actually escorted to the toilet by a security guard in Dublin Airport.
No way.
So,
Jesus.
Yeah. So that's all fine. I'm not feeling too bad at this stage. I'm thinking, well, she said I was going to go to the centre, and I'll probably have a test, going to come back negative, and I can be on my way. So I'm not too worried. I started to get slightly worried when the customs turned up, and nobody would answer our questions as to where we were going. And then the customs escorted us to the exit of where you come out at Dublin Airport, the kind of where your family would meet you and everything.
Yeah.
So just before that, we were met by an Irish Army officer in the whole camouflage gear and everything. And I thought, right, okay, this is getting a bit more serious. And we asked where we were. I asked where we were being taken to, and all he could say is everything would be explained when we get there. And I said, yeah, but where are we going? Is it in Dublin? Like where? Yeah, it's in Dublin. And I said, but where are we actually going? I want to know where I'm going right now. We'll explain that when you get there. Everybody was quite bemused, but we went along with it because, this is, he's an Irish Army officer. I mean, I was brought up to kind of trust people in authority. So I'm like, okay, I'll jump through the hoops and I'll just get home to my dad. That was the goal. Got onto a bus. There was a girl, God bless her, she was from Northern Ireland. She was bawling her head off on the bus. She was really, really upset. There was another lady whose uncle was dying in hospital, and all she wanted to do was go to see her uncle. And there was a woman and her husband, some small kids. Anyway, we were driven to the Croke Park Hotel in Dublin, pulled up, and another Irish Army officer got onto the bus and told us that we would be going into the hotel. Someone questioned him as to what was going on and, could he give us any more information? And he turned his back and just got off the bus.
This is like something out of a film now, Cindy. What you're describing to me is like something I've seen in a science fiction movie. It's astonishing what you're telling me.
That's how I felt. That I thought I was in a movie. It was really weird. It was something like, I don't know. It was just very, very strange. We were escorted into the reception of the hotel, and then there's kind of this room where just off like the main bit where there was a bar and everything. And when I saw the bar, I thought, oh my God, I could do with a drink to calm my nerves because I was in bits, Yeah. But we sat down anyway. Everybody sat down on different tables. We were given numbers on different tables. And then we were we were told to go up to reception one by one. So I went up to reception. The lady said to me at reception, oh yeah, I had my name and everything, all my details. And she gave me some forms. So she gave me an envelope with forms in it. So I questioned her. I said, can I just ask, is this free of charge? This, because she said you have to fill in the check-in form. Is this free of charge? She said, I can't answer that question. I said, am I liable? I can't answer that question. I was like, what is going on? So I took the papers, went back to the table. I'd see other people filling out the papers. I opened the papers and had a look at them. And there was a guest registration form, and I thought, well, I'm not filling that in because I'm not a guest.
Good for you.
So I asked to speak to an SLO, a state liaison officer, which was an Irish Army soldier. And I asked him if I was entitled to legal advice, and he said no.
He said no?
He said no. So I said, so this security guard come in and she said, look, just fill in the forms. This is a security guard from Sword Security. She said, just fill in the form. And then someone piped up and said, are we liable? And she said, are we liable for billing? And the security guard responded by saying, no, you're not. You're just filling in the form. We just need you to fill in the form. Now, there's two conflicting messages there.
Yeah.
Because the Irish Army officer, when I spoke to him, he said that I would be liable. And then the security officer for the hotel said I wouldn't be liable. So I'm sitting here with these forms and I'm thinking I'm not going to put pen to paper because I need some advice. What am I going to do? Because I don't really know what's going on here. So I asked to speak to the manager of the hotel. So the manager of the hotel came down and I said to her, can you tell me how much it is to stay here for the night? She said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I want to know if I'm liable. She said, well, we can't tell you that. I said, can you tell me if I walk out of here tomorrow daytime or whatever, are you going to charge me? And I think if I remember rightly, she said yes. And I said to her, well, if that's the case, I can't afford this. And she said, well, you can just refuse to pay. And I said, well, how much is it? And she goes, it's £155 a night. Then another SLO came along and he said that I would be staying in the hotel Friday night. On Saturday, someone would come and do a PCR test. And on Sunday, I would get the results, make an appeal, and I would be let go. So I thought to myself, that's Friday night and Saturday night. That's £155 for 2 nights. That's £360.
Not to mention that you're worried about your dad, who's not got any care at this stage.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And I hadn't phoned my dad because, well, I'd phoned him to say that I can't get out right now. There's things going on. I haven't had the correct test. I'm really, really sorry. You know, can you just hang on in there? And the police said I'd be home in a couple of hours. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't what I was told when I got to the hotel. Now, when you're in that situation, because it's like people like hindsight is 20/20. Yeah, so people will turn around and say to you, "You should have done this," or "You should have just walked out." You know, you don't know what to do.
No,
I didn't have legal advice. I didn't know what my rights were. I didn't know I was entitled to. But I mean, first and foremost, I knew I was entitled to some kind of legal advice. But then I was told I wasn't.
You were told you weren't by the army, by the officer. Now, it's a good point you make there, Cindy, about, you know, your right to walk away. Did any of these people communicate to you and the others that you couldn't leave?
Okay. Right. I said to the security officer, we are being held under duress. Right? We're being held under duress. I do not give my consent to be held here. I said, what happens if I walk out right now? She said, we'll call the guards.
Right.
We'll call the guards and we'll have you arrested. So I said, well, I don't want that because, you know, my job and everything, I need a DBS check. I can't risk that. I need to sort this out in a calm and civilized manner. But nobody's given me any advice. Do you know what I mean? I mean, if I'm just thinking if I had have walked out, I most likely would have gotten legal representation because once you're arrested, you're entitled to legal representation.
That's a great point. Yeah, isn't that really important? If you'd have left and then been taken to a nearby Garda station, at that point they would have had no choice but to provide you with a solicitor. Yeah. That's a good point, Cindy.
And not to mention the fact that the first thing that they would probably have asked me would be, do you have any health conditions?
Yeah.
Have you eaten? I hadn't eaten anything since 5 o'clock that morning. Nobody. I mean, we'd all been in the same scenario. Some people had travelled much further than I had to get to Stansted. So what the hell is going on here?
Jesus.
No food, no nothing, just fill in these forms. So I said, I got really upset then. I hate getting upset in front of people because I am a very strong individual. But I just was so desperate. I just started to cry and I said, I don't know what's going on here. I'm not filling in these papers. And they said, okay, fine, don't fill in the papers. Now, beforehand, they had told me I had to fill in the papers in order to be put into quarantine. And now they're telling me, okay, fine, don't fill in the papers. What will happen is we'll put you up in a room and we will get back to you. Give us a little bit of time. We'll get back to you. We'll get you an appeals form and you can fill it in and whatnot. Now, I'm up in the room then. They put me up into a room. I'm up in the room and I started feeling very edgy. I started feeling very panicky. So I thought, I'm just going to go out and walk around I went out of my room and I walked around the
corridors.
Kind of like around the corridors. Yeah. So I walked around the corridors and trying to like walk off this nervous energy that I have because I felt like I was going to have a panic attack or something. And I was walking around and I was stopped by a security guard and I was told that if I didn't get back to my room that I'd be arrested. And I said, I really don't, this is not acceptable. I said, this is not normal. I said, I haven't been given any advice. Nobody's come to me. Nobody's given me any food. What is going on? And then another security guard come along and they were radioing down saying, what room is she in? And blah, blah, blah. Because they wanted to escort me back to my room. When I got back to the room, I was just became more panicky because I thought, oh my God, I can't even leave this room.
Yeah.
And I started having a panic attack. I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought, oh my God, my heart was beating out of my chest. I had chest pains, couldn't breathe properly. And that was about after being in there I was probably in the room for about 3.5 hours with no contact. I was screaming, crying. Nobody came to my room. Nobody came to check on me, nothing. I phoned down to reception and I asked them to call an ambulance. I said I didn't feel well. So a medic came up to me, up to the room, and I said to her, do you know what time it is? And she said, it's 7 o'clock. And I said, 7 o'clock. I said, how long have I been here? And she said, I don't know. And I said, I arrived here possibly 6 hours ago, and because she came in and asked me if I had any medical conditions. And that's why I said, do you know how long I've been here? 6 hours. How do you know? Nobody asked me if I had any medical conditions when I came in here. Do you know what I mean? Nobody checked to see, before they even put me up in a room to see, is she diabetic? Is she this? Is she that? Does she have a history of whatever?
Reckless.
And so they could have put me in that room and anything, thankfully I'm a healthy person.
Yeah,
but at the same time, they didn't check. Nobody offered me any food. Do you know what I mean? She said to me after that, I said, I didn't call for a medic. I want an ambulance. And she said, yeah, we're getting one. And I said, and I waited an hour for an ambulance, an hour and a half, an hour and 35 minutes actually. That's how long I waited.
If you were having a heart attack at that stage, Cindy, well, it might have
you'd
have been gone, yeah. 90 minutes,
you'd be gone.
And who knows when they rang the ambulance as well. That's the thing. But anyway,
exactly. So I mean, it was crazy. I was brought to the Mater Hospital when I was being taken out of the hotel by the paramedics. Lovely guys, fantastic. And they were concerned as well because I have a history of tachycardia, like missed beats and double beats in my heart. So they said, right, well, we need to get you to A&E as soon as possible. As they were wheeling me out of the hotel, there's 2 soldiers standing by the door. They asked the paramedics, what time will she be finished? Can you give us a ring? And the paramedic turned around and said, no, sorry, mate, that's not our job. And I could see them, like they were mumbling under their breath, like, what the hell is going on here? And they told me that it was their first time that they'd been called to one of these kind of hotels.
I can't believe my ears, Cindy. This is, as an Irishman living in Salford, I'm hearing about Ireland. I'm not listening to a story about Nazi Germany. This is Ireland. So they bring you to the Mater Hospital. You have a history of tachycardia. That's a concern, obviously. So the guys are looking after you in the hospital. And 2 army uniformed guys show up to supervise this, and they want to know when you're done so that they can take you back. I'm not trying to...
No, sorry, Richie. They weren't supervising. They were standing by the hotel as I was leaving.
Ah, yeah. So they were there to make sure that you got to the hospital. You didn't leave.
Wanted to know.
Yeah.
So basically what happened was I arrived at the Mater Hospital. I was checked. I was left there for about 2 hours, sitting there on my own, mind you. No security, nothing. I was just left there. I could have left, but I felt unwell. I couldn't leave. I just felt... I was shaking. I was in bits. I was shaking. I had chest pain. You know, I just thought, oh my God, what is going on? They eventually got a nurse. They checked me in. They put me in a room on my own, and they did a COVID swab PCR test. They checked my bloods. They were really good now. They were very, very thorough. They checked my blood. They did another ECG. They did a chest x-ray. The doctor came in to speak to me. I said, has my negative result come back yet? She said, no, not yet. I said, if it comes back negative, can I go home to my dad? She said, I don't see why not. Right, okay, so that's fine. I'm texting my sister saying, I think I'm going to be allowed out because when the test comes back negative, then they're going to let me out. So about 10 minutes later, I noticed that there's a security guard sitting outside my room. I'm thinking, okay, that's new. And then I hear a nurse previous to that on the phone saying, yes, she's going to be discharged. So they had actually, the nurse had obviously had a conversation with the doctor and said, this lady can't go home. She's got to go back to the quarantine facility. They'd phoned the quarantine facility to get someone to come pick me up. So at about 3:30 in the morning, I was escorted with a negative COVID test. I asked for that paperwork. They handed it to me in the hospital. I was escorted by hospital security from the room that I was in to a minibus and then escorted by 2 men back to the hotel. When I got back to the hotel, the security guard there said to me that I was to go back up to the room, and I said, no, I have a negative PCR test. I want to leave now. And they said that they would get an SLO on the phone. So they got the SLO on the phone. I spoke to him, and he said that I had to make an appeal before I was released.
An appeal?
An appeal.
What's that about? An appeal to who?
I think it was the Department of Health.
Wow, Cindy. You've got the bloody thing in your hand, the negative result.
Yeah.
And they're saying, no, you can't go anywhere, you've got to do an appeal. You must have been absolutely... How you didn't go crazy at this stage, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but I just kind of thought I need to think about this logically. So if I lose, I can't lose it. I can't afford to lose it. I need to think about this logically. So let's just keep calm and try to sort it out.
Yeah.
So basically after that, when he said he needed an appeal, I hung up the phone and I phoned the guards. I phoned 999 and I got names and I got badge numbers and I got everything. So the person who answered the phone, the guard who answered the phone, said to me, I said, I'm currently being detained at such and such a hotel, the Croke Park Hotel. I said, I have a negative PCR test. I want to go home, explain my circumstances. He said, I can't help you there. He said, I'm sorry. I said, what's your name? The minute I took his name, he said, actually, let me just check. He gave me a 1850 number, like some kind of COVID health regulation helpline. I got off the phone to him. I phoned the helpline. Of course, the helpline is closed because it's now 4:00 in the morning. After that, I phoned the guards back and I got a horrendous response saying, don't you dare call back here. We've heard from you already. This is ridiculous. You calling us. We will not be going down there. The guy wouldn't give me his name, but he did provide me with his badge number. I then decided that I was going to call a solicitor. I phoned solicitors, phones were ringing off, and the security guard there at the time from Sword Security, she was actually the only person who showed me any kind of empathy whatsoever. She said to me, listen, she said, just try to calm down. She said, you're not going to be able to do anything in the next couple of hours. Just go back up to the room and go to sleep. And I said, do you understand what you're saying to me?
Yeah.
Would you be able to sleep in my position? So she escorted me back up to the room, and I just felt totally disheartened, and I just couldn't believe what was going on. And I started to go online and I started to do videos. And to be honest, I have videos of everything. I have videos of when I was on the coach. I have videos of the confrontation and the conversations that I had with the Irish Army. I have videos that I have from the security. I can prove everything that I've just told you. So, anybody that, I mean, don't get me wrong, with all the social media and everything, the majority of the comments and all, it's all support, everybody's disgusted. The majority of people.
How could you not be? This reminds me of dystopian science fiction movies that I might have seen in the 1980s. Futuristic worlds where people, my mate Jean Ann is listening to this in Cleggan, in Connemara, and she says it's Kafka-esque. It is Kafka-esque. It's reminiscent of Franz Kafka's lunatic world, the oppression, the illogical nature of everything that happened. Totally illogical, spooky, sinister, and you've had to put up with all of that. I mean, the video you put on Twitter, it's heartbreaking to watch that. I mean, you're at your wit's end there. You're at your lowest, aren't you?
I've got a whole lot more videos.
Yeah.
And it's not just me that's in them. But, I mean, after that, I was... there was a knock on the door, I think about 8 o'clock in the morning. Someone handed me a form to do an online appeal. I did the online appeal. Then I got a phone call at about 9:30. And it was someone called Robert. And Robert, actually, my partner's name is Robert, and he lives over in the UK. And basically, I thought it was him, and I thought, why is he ringing me through the hotel? Why doesn't he just ring my phone? But he happened to be a solicitor, and he said, I've heard about your plight. He's a member of a group called Ireland on Lockdown, and it's on Telegram. And I had never heard of any such groups or anything like that. And he said, listen, he said, I'd really like to help you. So previously, literally 5 minutes before he phoned me, I got a phone call saying that I could leave. And this was this guy from Sword Security, who had previously called me a smart ass and said he didn't like my attitude and
Lovely.
all this. But so this guy called Robert phoned me. He said, I'm on this group, Ireland on Lockdown. He said, I really want to help you get released. I said, Robert, I actually burst into tears the minute he said, I'd really like to help you get out of there. I burst into tears because it was kind of like, right, finally someone wants to help me, like finally I'm speaking to a solicitor.
Yeah.
But I should have been speaking to a solicitor. Like, why didn't somebody just tell me, here's like a solicitor that you can phone for free legal aid? Do you know what I mean? Why couldn't the police tell me that? Why couldn't the Irish Army tell me that? Why couldn't the staff at the Croke Park Hotel tell me that? Surely I was entitled to some kind of legal representation. How can they hold people and not give them any kind of...
Tell them nothing. Yeah, they told you nothing.
Anything.
I mean, that must be a violation of people's human rights. You can't just kidnap people and stick them on a bus and transport them into the city and throw them into a hotel and tell them nothing. And put ice-cold security staff around who, ignore them. That can't be right. Like, I mean, as an Irish woman, that's not Ireland, is it, Cindy? That's not what I imagine Ireland to be, that we would go along. That's North Korea, that. Isn't it?
Well, that's what my son said to me on the phone last night. He said, Mom, I'm so proud of you. I can't believe, you And I said, but sure, what else would you expect me to do? I'm not going to sit there and fill in forms and sign stuff that I do not consent to.
Yeah.
I would not. And that's exactly what he said. He said, Mom, it's like North Korea. And my kids came to Ireland every summer and stayed with my dad. And like my dad had his own business and worked for my dad. And they loved Ireland. And to be honest, that dream, that whole romantic idea of Ireland is gone for me. It's gone.
Yeah, we like
it.
We like a bit
of for the Irish people. I'm so glad, and I'm so glad I live in the UK.
I know.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's not perfect. But bloody hell, there is accountability. Do you know what I mean? There's accountability to an extent that when you ask for some kind of representative, you'll get it. They don't go along with these cloak and dagger scenarios.
Now, listen, I'm not going to contradict you because I don't know that you're right or wrong, but I would suspect, Cindy, this is just my opinion. It's just opinion. It's only my opinion. That the governments of Europe, they seem to be kind of in lockstep when it comes to this. I think if a UK citizen was to come back into the country from somewhere else, from Spain or somewhere like that, or another part of the world, I wouldn't be surprised if they were subjected to what you were subjected to. I wouldn't be. I mean, look, don't forget this. Go on, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you see, I've had experiences not like this, but I've had experiences of incompetence within the Irish system before. Yeah, I've had experiences of, I've been over here before with my young children, and my son needed to see a dentist. And I phoned the dentist, and I made a complaint about something, and I asked the guy at the dental office for his name, and he wouldn't give me his name. Now, if we were in the UK, that just wouldn't happen. You're obliged to give that person your name.
Yeah.
So there's things that go on in Ireland, and have gone on for years, that are just totally... they're very blasé about the way that they go about things. There doesn't seem to be any kind of regulation, and if there is, they're not adhering to it.
I'll give you this, Cindy. I'll give you this. Sorry to interrupt you. I'll give you this. When it comes to the Garda oath, the oath that a Garda Síochána, whether when they are about to go on duty for the first time, they don't act on their oath. I've seen 1,000 videos of people calmly and reasonably asking, Gardaí, are they on their oath? Are you behaving as you should do? What's your name? And I've seen Gardaí online on YouTube videos and elsewhere behaving reprehensibly. So I'll give you that. No doubt about that. Mm-hmm. But I've seen cops over here act just as bad, I know you're not running down Ireland. And listen, I left Ireland 16, 17, 18 years ago. And I've not been back. And I left with a lot of anger for the way that Ireland was going. So I'm not the biggest fan of Ireland, even though I love Ireland and I love Irish people.
You see,
so
what the great pity is, right?
Go on.
The epitome of Ireland is community, family, togetherness, supporting each other. Even like the GAA, everything. That's how I was brought up.
Yeah, me
and
too.
That's why. And my family, do you know what I mean? My parents, they were, oh my God, upstanding members of the community. My dad worked so hard. My mother, God rest her, she died years ago, but she was an absolute saint. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They would be, she would be turning in her grave if she knew what was going on in Ireland today.
They wouldn't believe it, would they? Our departed grandparents and parents, they wouldn't believe what's happening today in our country. And can I ask you this, Cindy? I must, I've been riveted by what you're saying so much that I've not done my blooming job. I should have reminded our listeners. We're listening to Cindy Connolly. Cindy lives in London, but is Irish, obviously. And she's been describing what happened to her last weekend when she came back into the country to take care of her dad, whose care had moved on, leaving him, vulnerable. He needs to be cared for. She had a lateral flow test in London. She passed that. When she arrived in Dublin, well, she's described it. I'm not going to go over and over it again. What happened to her being taken away to basically a detention centre, not being given any access to information as to why she was there, not given access to legal advice, dreadful stuff. This is dreadful stuff. And, you know, I know what Cindy is saying is the truth. I've been reading about this in the Irish press today and yesterday. It's dreadful that this is going on in our country, and it's important that more and more people hear about it. And Cindy, what would you... I mean, you're, by the sounds of you, you're not prepared to let this go. Obviously, you're delighted. You know, you're going to be able to be with your dad. Thank God for that. But you're not letting it go, I don't believe.
I feel like, to be honest, I mean, if there was anyone out there that could support me in a legal way, because I couldn't afford to take on, you know, I'm a single parent. I brought up 3 kids of my own, so I can't afford to take on whoever I need to take on. I wouldn't even have a clue how to start the procedure. So if there is anyone out there listening that wants to help, to go down the road of, you know, I want these wrongs to be put right. I'm not saying, look, people might say, oh, well, you came in on the wrong test, blah, blah, blah. Right, whatever. Fair enough, if that's what's in the legislation. But you cannot take people somewhere and not tell them where they're going, and not tell them how long they're going to be there for, and not tell them that they're either liable or they're not liable for a stay in a hotel, and not give them access to legal advice. You can't do that. It's wrong. And it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen to anyone. Never mind happen to me. It shouldn't happen to anyone in any circumstance. It's not right. And that, to me, sends... I actually have been a nervous wreck for the past couple of days, and I don't think it's going to take a lot of time to get over this, because I am constantly worried that the police are going to turn up at the door for whatever reason, or there might be some kind of backlash. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't trust the authorities now. How can you trust the authorities when you phone 999 looking for help and they tell you to get lost?
So
how the hell could you trust them after that?
How could you? So what you're saying is you fear retaliation because when you made the video, it embarrassed them. There's no doubt that your video and videos on Twitter, there's no doubt that those videos were, I think, instrumental in them. Even though you had the past PCR test, you had the pass in your hand, I think the videos embarrassed them. And you're wondering now, I suppose, understandably, will they try and retaliate against you in some way? You're concerned about that?
Yeah. But like, I mean, you know, people say they would have no legal standing or whatever. It doesn't matter. They didn't have a legal standing to take me to a hotel and not give me access to legal advice. But yet they still did it. You know, this is the country that people live in now. How can this happen?
A lot of people on Twitter, while we've been speaking, have made references to Nazi Germany. And I know that people are doing it on Twitter, and I know they're making a good point, and they're not being in any way disrespectful. The point they're trying to make is a very good one. People were loaded on trains, and they were told, "Oh, we won't tell you where you're going. Don't worry about it. It's good for you. It'll be okay." You know, that's where it begins. This is where it begins when people can do that.
I tell you, that is exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened. We were put on a bus. We weren't told where we were going. We were given a piece of paper saying that we were maybe liable for a 14-day stay in a hotel. Yeah?
Jesus Christ, yeah. Sorry for swearing, but yeah. Unbelievable. The stress of that, you know, and you said that it's going to take you a while to get over it. It's a very traumatic thing. If it happened to me, it would take me some time to get over it as well. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to, can I give your Twitter handle out? Folks, you can follow Cindy on Twitter. It's an easy one to remember. She's at Cindy Soul Music. At Cindy Soul Music. Cindy is a soul singer. You'll find her there, Cindy Soul Music. So if anybody in Dublin or in Ireland knows or has any interest in this and might want to help Cindy explore her legal options, make a contact with her through Twitter. It's at Cindy Soul Music, because you were gravely wronged. This is not inconvenience. This is wronging people. This is violating people's basic rights. It's outrageous.
And I'm not being funny, Richie. Yeah, another thing that I want to make a point of. Yeah. Let's say that I was somehow had some kind of psychological issue. Yeah, let's say I suffered with depression or God knows what. They didn't ask me anything about my health. Nothing.
That's right. You said that, yeah.
So what would have happened if someone is detained like that and has mental health issues, and then something happens to them in that hotel room? How does that work? How can you do that?
That's
How can you
astounding.
put people at risk?
That's astounding.
That's what you're doing.
Astounding. It astounds me that you grab somebody at an airport, march them onto a bus, throw them into a hotel, and you don't try and determine if they have any medical needs. That is astounding to me. I believe you as well. I totally understand, that this is what happens.
Now, Richie, let me just tell you now, within the papers that they gave me, there was a medical form. But because I didn't consent to my detention, I didn't fill in the medical form. But yet they still didn't ask me verbally if I had any medical conditions. They never even approached the issue of the form. Once I got upset, okay, don't fill in the form, go up to the room. Right, so I just want to make that clear. There was a medical form in the paperwork.
Do you know what happened then?
Yeah.
So as far as they're concerned, once they've given you the forms, as far as they're concerned, they fulfilled their obligations. And if you don't fill it in, well, tough cookies, basically. That's probably the attitude. But it's still not good enough.
Maybe.
But it's not good enough.
It's not good enough. But not even being funny, there were other people, once I piped up and said that I didn't want to consent to filling in the form. There were other people in the same room that then decided they didn't want to fill in the form. And what happened to those people? They were rounded up and put into a different room.
Yeah. Jesus, I can't believe it. I do believe it, but I can't believe it. I know it happened, but I can't believe it. I thought we were better than that, Our people, I thought
the Irish people, in essence, are better than that. It's just, unfortunately, the government aren't.
Yeah. How's your dad?
You know what? He's not too bad. He has been totally stressed out by the whole situation.
Yeah.
Totally stressed out by the whole situation. I mean, it's unnecessary. He's only gone out of hospital, for God's sake. Why would you want to cause any more problems for a 79-year-old?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, I'm just glad to be home. And, I could have turned around and said, put me on a flight back to London. In fact, in the airport, that's what we had asked, if we could go on a flight back to London.
And could you?
No, they wouldn't let us.
Oh, Jesus.
They wouldn't let us.
It's opened your eyes, Cindy, right? To what's happening and to what people are capable of doing.
Yeah, it really has. I didn't consider anything like this before. But I don't understand why there are so many inconsistencies with all this, testing. And if I came in on the same test in March, when apparently the death rates were a lot higher than they are now, why was I stopped the other day and I wasn't stopped in March? Why? When I walked in March, I was met by an immigration officer who looked at me, looked at my stuff and said, welcome back. He said, what's your reason for coming home? I said, I need to come home and look after my dad. He said, welcome back. And I thought, this is great.
So
Love Ireland, because
changed?
you know what? Everything's just, people are just so nice to you. Do you know what I mean? And that doesn't mean that people still aren't nice. Don't get me wrong. Like neighbours, our neighbours have helped us out so much. While my dad's been in hospital, coming and feeding the dogs, our neighbour down the road has come every night to look after the dogs and feed them. Fantastic. And the community and, people messaging me saying, are you all right? This is disgusting what's happened and, blah, blah, blah. It's just it's so sad to see such lovely people being governed by such evil individuals.
And the thing as well to remember, before we've got about 2 minutes left, Cindy, the thing to remember, of course, as well is, and this has been proven and documented, COVID-19 is a mild respiratory illness. It doesn't affect the great majority of people. It does not, by their own admission. It's mostly very senior and people with comorbidities that are at risk for it. The rest of us would only be mildly ill. It's
Richie,
not
can
that
I
serious.
just say I had COVID. I actually had COVID in January.
So you had it. Now, how did it? What was it
had
like
it.
for you? How ill were you?
I was ill. Don't get me wrong. I was quite ill, but not. It was like the worst flu I ever had. Yeah.
Right.
My bones were sore. I was coughing. I had a temperature. You know, I stayed at home. I stayed indoors. I was in bed for a couple of days, and that was that.
That was that.
I've had it. So, you know, don't get me wrong. I'm not one of these people going, "Oh, it doesn't exist." It does exist. I had it. Yeah, I tested positive for it. I did my self-isolation, all the rest of it, and that's it.
But they're making it out to be the plague, and it isn't, and that's where it's very sinister as to why they're doing that. And I think, Cindy, not that it's really, anything that you should be concerned about. My opinion means nothing to you, nor should it. But I've believed for a long time that it's been taken advantage of by people who would like to have a lot more control over the things we do and where we go. And that's just my bloody opinion for what it's worth,
Yeah.
Before we do run out of time, you're a singer, obviously, and you mentioned, didn't you, at the beginning of the conversation that it's been difficult for you with work and all of that. So, as a working singer, then it's been a difficult time for you, Cindy.
So actually, Richie, I'm a driving instructor. I'm a self-employed driving instructor. And so singing is just a thing I do on the side.
Bit of moonlighting. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
It, yeah.
So you're a driving instructor. That makes me laugh, Cindy.
I am.
I tell you why I'm laughing at that. The backlog is what? It's hundreds of thousands, right? You must be inundated.
It's unreal.
Yeah, you must be inundated.
Well, I was inundated before Ford, before my engine. I only bought a car about a month ago. My engine blew up, so
it's in the garage.
I'm trying to get my money back off Ford, but they're not being very helpful at the moment.
I'd safe to say, Cindy, I think you've had better months than the last month that you've had. Let's be honest.
Listen, that's probably the truest word spoken.
But you have an Irish sense of humour.
Never mind. My son told me to do the lotto tonight or whenever it is, so I better do it.
Do it all. Do the Euro Millions, do the Irish Lotto, do everything.
Absolutely.
Thanks for reaching out and for sharing your hugely important story.
And thanks to everybody for the support.
Not at all, Cindy. Hey, listen, I did mention Cindy Soul Music, but is there anywhere else people can reach out to you if they have? Oh, by the way, Fanula, who listens to this programme, lovely Irish woman, Fanula, she says, Richie, Cindy should reach out to people like Dolores Cahill. Because
I have already. I just haven't. But this might be a bit slow. This story might be a bit slow in the uptake. I'm not really sure how it's panning out. I'm not very, technologically minded. So I don't really know how it's. But I have reached out to her. So we'll see what happens.
See what happens, eh? I'm following you now on Twitter. You're following me. So any developments?
Sure.
But you don't have to wait for any developments. Just say hello sometimes. It's been lovely to meet you, Cindy.
Sure, I will do.
And look after your old man. Look after the dad.
I will do, of course. Absolutely.
Cheers, Cindy. God bless. I'm lovely to speak. I'm really sorry that happened to Cindy, and for anybody else that's happened to as well. She's in Dublin now, looking after the old pop. Cindy Connolly there, who had an absolutely nightmarish experience over the last weekend, reached out to the programme this afternoon and asked to come on. Somebody put her in touch with it. She wasn't aware of the programme at all, hadn't a clue, hadn't a Scooby-Doo about the programme, but somebody said, listen, if you want somebody to listen to you, give that Baldy Gammon a ring. So thankfully she got in touch, and there you are.